On this episode, we talk about Sheamus forming the League of Nations, Stone Cold's podcasts with Keller and Mick Foley, Tommy Dreamer returning to the WWE, Roman Reigns alliances, Bytes announcements, and more now on Byte That. Hey gang, what is going on? You're listening to episode 119 of Byte That's weekly wrestling podcast, the show where we talk about WWE's Squared Circle and all the stories surrounding it. So thank you for tuning in and checking out the show. Remember to check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, ByteThat.com, and of course for this and tons more, head on over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ByteThatCast. My name is Juan Velez. I am from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and joining me, I am so happy about this. It is finally, we got him, people, from Boston, Massachusetts, Ryan McNulty.
Juan, it's a pleasure to be here to finally make it on the Byte That podcast.
Man, about time.
I know, right? It's been long overdue.
And from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, Keith Poshik. How you doing, man? Oh, Ryan, hypothetically, you could do the voice because, you know, people do have that distinction problem sometimes. But unfortunately, Mr. Poshik cannot make it. He's out there making money for the working man, Keith, and the working man. I mean, Ryan.
Yeah.
See, I got your name's confused now. Okay, who am I? Yeah. What matters is that this is going to be a special episode. Ever since last week's show, multiple podcasts have come out. Two of them involve Stone Cold. So Stone Cold had a podcast with Keller, one that came out this week with Mick Foley. There's been a lot of threads on Squared Circle, and a lot of these different things lead to the same conclusion about the product, so we'll get to that in the second part of the show. But, however, we do have some cooler, interesting things to talk about Raw. But
how was your Thanksgiving, though? It
was good. Right. Turkey. It's been a long weekend.
We've had a holiday weekend.
Yeah. It was good. In Puerto Rico, we do have turkey, and we do celebrate Thanksgiving because I know I did get some tweets about that. We also eat pork because not everybody enjoys turkey down here. I ate a lot, and I did a lot of painting around the house, and I put up some Christmas decorations. How about you, man?
Very nice. No, I had quite a Thanksgiving. Took advantage of some of those Black Friday deals. I didn't actually go out shopping, but I did get
Smart.
WWE 2K16 for $30 from Best Buy.
Woo. Oh, that is a damn good deal.
Yeah, it just came in today. So I actually can finally play it now, so you guys can stop giving me crap.
Yeah, okay, so we need to make that a thing. We got some games too. We got, I believe it was Diablo 3 for $20. We got Assassin's Creed Unity for $10. I got Euro Truck Simulator 2 on Steam also. So that is going to be a thing.
Euro Truck.
Yeah, it's a simulator game.
So is the only difference is
trucks.
like the steering wheel's on the other side?
If so, I am in for a world of trouble. Okay, Ryan. Raw. We've had these situations where we don't necessarily enjoy the product as much. People talk about the ratings, but let's talk about us. How do we really feel about the show? How did you feel about this week's Raw?
This week's Raw, I thought, was a big improvement from last week. It definitely felt like things were moving forward, and just the structure of the show itself, just how they paced it, and it felt different. It felt maybe not quality-wise, but just kind of structure-wise, Attitude Era-esque, with like a ton of backstage segments and just kind of like seeing the same guys multiple times overnight, which, hey, maybe isn't the greatest for getting as many people on the show as possible, but kind of good for consistent storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was an overall pretty decent show. I wasn't in love with it. I do think it was still passable, but I did enjoy that there was something that you needed to go into. See, we'll talk about the League of Nations very soon. But Keith mentioned, as I won't be on the show, it was a good episode of Raw. Maybe a little bit too much New Day, and I hope the ECW reunion was just a one-night thing. But other than that, it was good. I do think that the WWE is capitalizing on New Day's popularity, and this episode showed, because you're developing this huge heel stable, but you're still sort of piggybacking a little bit on New Day's popularity. You know, people tune into Raw to just see how crazy they are. Sheamus was involved with them in that match at Survivor Series before cashing in. But I do think that is also good that they are a definite heel stable. You know, not talking about the league, but talking about New Day, because we've had so many conversations about that. And I think people forget, because they're getting some flack now. They are supposed to be obnoxious. We're supposed to not like them. So I think pairing them up with the authority in the league, like it's a weird thing that's happening right now. It's almost like way too many people. But at the same time, I think it's a really good opportunity for, you know, you have your Barrett, you have your Sheamus, Rusev, Del Rio, which is a little bit out of nowhere. But we'll get to that for a second, in a second. Ryan, somebody else came back on Raw.
Yes, it seems to be overshadowed, but it did happen.
It did happen. So we have the Dudley Boys taking on the Wyatts. This is a rivalry that's quickly developing. And Bubba Ray was talking about the fact that they were outnumbered and they were going to have their family. Now, historically, anybody that watches ECW will think, all right, man, Spike, you know,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Bring him on down. Yeah, and then Tommy Dreamer came out, and I just thought about Spike Dudley shedding a tear down his eye. Did you like Tommy Dreamer coming back?
I did, because I was expecting Spike Dudley, which, let's be real, okay? I love me some Spike Dudley. I actually did his training seminar one time.
Right.
If you're gonna take on these massive members of the Wyatt family and like your big call-in is Spike Dudley, you're gonna be in trouble.
Only makes sense.
So I think bringing in Tommy Dreamer, a guy who like symbolically is everything that is ECW, was a great move. And like I expect that we're gonna see another guy. Like the Dudleys are gonna build their team so that we can see maybe a 4-on-4. I'm hoping.
Yeah, that does seem to be the direction. Keith mentioned he was hoping the ECW reunion was a one-time thing, but as is the case after Raw, there was a post-Raw interview with the Dudleys and Tommy Dreamer, and the way that everything came out, it does very much seem like Tommy Dreamer's back. He has his own theme song, and I don't think they would go as far as to like have a new song with lyrics for a one-time appearance. So what do you think about that? That they are bringing somebody back, not for the main event scene, but for the Dudleys, who also came back. So you have this whole team that is based on, you know, Attitude Era, ECW, and all that good stuff, and then taking on the younger team of the Wyatt family.
I kind of see this as a very similar to when the Shield took on like the New Age Outlaws and Kane. Like it's a kind of a way to put over the Wyatt family, finally put over the Wyatt family, with like using basically veterans from the Attitude Era. So I don't necessarily believe like Tommy Dreamer is full time back. I wouldn't be surprised if after the program was done that he kind of just faded out. I don't see him as like a full-time roster member quite like the Dudleys are.
Isn't it a little weird that in such a PG era, you know, the innovator of violence is making his way back? Even in the backstage interview, you know, Bubba referred to him as that nickname. And I just don't see how Tommy Dreamer can mesh or blend in with today's product. So do you think that it's very much going to be you're in this segment because it involves the Wyatt family, but nothing else? It's like he doesn't exist in the roster just for this one storyline.
I don't think it makes too much of a difference. Like, he's just going to basically be anything that Extreme Rules is in WWE today. You know, he'll still use weapons and stuff. He's just going to have to stay within WWE's boundaries.
What you think about that spot where Bray Wyatt got put through the table? It was actually kind of nasty looking. I think that when you first look at it, it looked soft. But then you saw it. He landed like on his tailbone, like right on the table.
Yeah, it was not pretty, but it's safe to say we're leading to a tables match, if that hasn't been confirmed already.
Yeah, it's nice. So we'll have the TLC match to main event the show.
Which I'll be going to TLC. I didn't even mention that.
Right, yeah. So make sure to give us your TLC reception.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. Okay, so the next couple of topics definitely have a crescendo effect because we'll first cover Roman Reigns. Going back to Survivor Series, I really liked the whole paranoia phase. I don't know if you noticed that, like his lips were just like shaking after Sheamus just won the title, and I thought they were going to go more on that route. With this Raw, it seems like he's very much Cena 2.0. I don't want to say this, but he does seem like that Cena 2.0 guy. You know, he's having a good time. Hey, I took the belt, and Dean Usos, what's going on, man? Let's have a great time. And I just don't feel like I believe him. I no pun intended. I do feel like Reigns keeps playing this character that I just don't care about. And I may add, for the whole build up to Survivor Series, my thing was I'm perfectly okay with Reigns as champion. I got to that point, but now it's like, man, it was there. You could have just taken that, but now you really just want to make sure I'm tired of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a thing where Reigns is just kind of very cookie cutter, and at the same time, like Ambrose kind of having to be on the sideline. Like it's like his character, I feel like, is suffering too, where he just seems like a total lackey now, a guy who doesn't really stand on his own, with this kind of like Reigns, Ambrose, and the Usos. But as far as Reigns go, I'm already going to pull from what like Steve Austin said in his podcast, because it really works here, is that it seems like he's trying too hard to be what they want him to be instead of being himself. And it's just coming off as phony. You know, everything he's doing is because, you know, he's the anti-authority character on TV, but it's so clear to everyone in the audience that he is the chosen one, that how can you be into that story?
Yeah, I agree. Little detail.
We have to buy in, and
yeah.
You can't suspend disbelief if you know the company is like, this is the guy we want, and then he's fighting that exact power on television.
And you know, the crazy thing is, this past week I listened to our 2014 best of. So it's a video version of the podcast we had in person, Ryan and myself, and I could easily copy and paste what I said about Roman Reigns then, bring it up now, and it would almost be the same thing. The whole process is an equivalent to the Daniel Bryan situation, but Daniel Bryan is not 6 foot plus, 200 something pounds that looks like a superstar. Roman Reigns is not this, bald badass and Stone Cold Steve Austin. He is Roman Reigns, and at the end of Raw, this annoyed me way too much. You know how he always has these awkward facial expressions, like the what kind of face or something? So he loses the match, and they cut to him, ringside, and then Cole immediately has to just reference, like, his face says it all. And it's like, stop. It feels like it is so segmented, like it is so scripted. It doesn't feel organic, it almost feels like the announcers are just waiting, like, wait for the camera. Okay, now you can see that.
That actually is precisely what I'm sure they're doing.
And it's getting to me because, like, I don't know what I want, like, from the product. And I know there's a question way at the end of the show where it's like, why do you still watch the product? But I'm having a hard time right now figuring out, like, what is the main reason I tune into Raw? Because with all the guys that have been injured, I am legitimately left with a roster of guys that are really talented. But for me, I don't know who I tune in for.
Well, I can tell you I tune in mainly for the New Day, because they very much seem like the only people who are going out there and truly being themselves, having fun. And sure, maybe they're not the best heels because they're so likable, but you know what? I actually enjoy watching them, which is more than I can say for a lot of the roster. But as far as like a singular superstar, I really feel like the last organic WWE superstar was, I guess you get Daniel Bryan, but CM Punk. CM Punk, at least when I'm talking just straight up promos, CM Punk was a guy that you bought into everything he said, and you felt like, who they were backstage didn't matter, because like you felt like CM Punk behind the scenes and CM Punk on WWE TV are the same person. Everything he says in that ring, I believe he thinks that backstage. And he's a guy who when I started watching wrestling again in 2012, was the guy that really kept me interested in WWE. And I feel like we need more CM Punks in the world. Guys who you really buy into their character. It doesn't have to be promos, but you really buy into who they are on screen instead of, we look at a guy and we're like, oh, Dolph Ziggler. We're not saying, hey, I hope Dolph Ziggler can overcome this guy and win the match. We're saying, I hope they let Dolph Ziggler win. You know what I mean? We're so disconnected at this point.
Okay, so I think that we
There's
do
a lot
need
of
to sort of bring up some topics. Yeah, so I'm gonna accelerate some of the things because in order to talk about the League of Legends, I was gonna say the League of Nations,
the League of Explorers.
Yeah, the League of
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, we can keep going here. One of the reasons that we got to bring up the Stone Cold podcast, and we're moving this up because we're gonna keep referencing.
Yeah,
it. Might as well get it out of the way. Is the characters do not feel like an extension of themselves. They feel like they are characters that are being fabricated for the purpose of us caring about them in any way. It doesn't matter if the person is part of that character or not, but historically, the whole premise that we as fans have been taught is that the superstar is an extension of the person, but turned up by 11, by 100, or something like that. And we're getting to a point where WWE is overexposing the business. I mean, it's gone. Like kayfabe, I was really thinking about this once I listened to the podcast. Kayfabe, as we know it, is completely dead. The moment that on Raw you promote Breaking Ground, which the moment Raw ends, they can just go immediately behind the scenes, and those 2+ something million people that watch Raw are being exposed. Whether they watch the show or not, you're promoting it to them. Tyler Breeze, who's on that show, and then in a Breaking Ground episode, he says, well, I was looking for a character that, could really fit in or something. It took a while. And we like that. Like the podcast audience, like the people that have podcasts, the people that listen to podcasts, because we're a very niche portion of that audience, right? Like we love to see some of that behind the stuff.
Behind the stuff.
Buff is the stuff. Okay. So, Ryan, where do you really want to start off with this? What is the one impactful message you got out of that Stone Cold podcast with Wade Keller from the PW Torch?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of touch on the thoughts you brought up. But basically, this is, okay, I don't listen to the Stone Cold podcast as often as I used to, but I tune into every single podcast that has Wade Keller on it because the guy just has, I love his thoughts on wrestling.
Amazing mind, yeah.
He's got a really good mind for wrestling. And Austin, of course, is really good at, bringing the they're good at going back. Their back and forth is always just really fascinating to listen to. You get a guy who's just been a fan and has written, writes about wrestling. And then you get a guy who actually was in the business as a wrestler, one of the, biggest stars of all time. So their back and forth is just amazing. So I recommend anytime he's on it, you should just listen to that podcast because it's always going to be good. But the things that they touched on, we can get into the "This is awesome" chants. But before that, I do kind of want to talk about what you were talking about with the whole Breaking Ground and all that. Is okay when we were wrestling fans 10 years ago, so it's like 2005. Like, we would have loved all the stuff that's out now, but it's like, should we get that? Should we get that is kind of the real question. Is like, we were trying to, any little piece of news that came out on the internet, we were all over that. But there was still a big air of mystery to WWE. Any wrestler that was active in the company was not on podcasts or anything giving interviews like that. If it was an interview, it was like the Today Show where it's very, they're just going to promote the pay-per-view, pretty much stay in character, not even like almost not even admit, like, they were almost fully in kayfabe without just being like wrestling is real, So we very, very infrequently got to see who these people really were. We could only take little rumors that we heard backstage about Randy Orton crapping in someone's bag and all that. We took what little pieces we had. But now we are spoiled to hell. And And the casual fans are also kind of spoiled to hell, where the curtain has never been more pulled back for everyone to just see everything. And
let's put it this way. They didn't pull it back. There is honestly no curtain.
Yeah, the curtain is gone. The curtain is gone. And it makes sense. We have no jobbers anymore. There's no more people to jerk the curtain. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
like with that just completely unveiled, look, Breaking Ground is a fun show to watch. But should it exist is a question. Like, can anyone suspend their disbelief anymore when, even Up, Down, Down, I just watched the Street Fighter thing with The Miz and it was hilarious. But should we be seeing things like that? Should we be seeing Bray Wyatt?
For context, yeah. So Bray Wyatt is somebody that we have rarely seen off character. I don't think that ever, even when he was on the St. Roberts podcast, he was like, quiet, down to earth, out of nowhere. Xavier Woods' YouTube gaming channel, Up, Down, Down, he is there in the background, having a great time, smiling. The whole gang is there. And it's like, whoa, like, okay. We waited for like a Stone Cold podcast or something like that to happen. But
yeah, we got
away
Kofi
in a Street Fighter tournament.
Kofi Kingston, who's supposed to be a heel, wearing a Dolph Ziggler shirt, who's a baby face. Like, there's just all these things. But it's like when we see who these guys are, because Up, Down, Down is a good way of seeing more how people are in real life. The more things like this we see, how do we get invested into that character when 5 minutes later we're watching them, goofing off and playing video games? As fun as it is to watch, it's killing the immersion of the actual show that's supposed to be their true moneymaker.
I think a good example to bring up is, say your dad was Stone Cold, right? That would be awesome. But for you would never see him as Stone Cold. You're like, that is my dad on screen. Dad, stop being lame with the beer truck and all that good stuff. Because traditionally, whenever somebody really close to you does something that people perceive as cool, you just see it as like, well, of course, that is the person that I've known my whole life. And I think that WWE tried to address the whole pandering issue of people have always wanted to know more behind the scenes stuff, so we can't give that on Raw. So let's just give everything, like podcast, the countdowns, all of these things, and they are primarily off character. Once again, for us, that is cool because we see the content, but then when it transitions to Raw and all of that, you almost become an equal to those people. And here's a good example. So Nikki Bella, right, was supposed to be the top heel diva before getting injured, but when you see her on Instagram, she's like, nice pictures with flowers and all of that.
Yeah,
so
social media is another
hate on that.
Social media is another aspect of that. I'm not saying we're even the exception to this content. I think it kills immersion for everyone. And once again, let me clarify. All this content, I enjoy it, but I'm asking the question: is it good for any of us because it's completely killing the immersion of it? I just wanted that to be clear. And then as far as the "This is awesome" chants, Wade Keller on the podcast was basically saying, if you're hearing a "This is awesome" chant, you should be thinking that match is a failure, because we're not even going to get into the fact that a lot of these chants just happen because the match goes long and there's just
a lot of times it happens before there even is a match.
Yeah, it might just happen because the match goes long, and then there's pretty much you will always get a "This is awesome" chant if there is a false finish where typically you would expect a finish. That's it. That is all it takes to get a "This is awesome" chant nowadays, or some random high spot, even if the crowd didn't give a flying F about the match before, like the match all the way up until that point. But anyway, the actual thing with the "This is awesome" chant is what, I don't even remember hearing those 10 years ago, but it's basically because "This is awesome" chant is a failure because no one's booing or cheering for either the babyface or the heel. They're just saying, yay, this is entertainment and I like what I'm seeing, but I'm not invested in either character. I just think the action that they're putting on is fun. No stars are made. It's just, oh, that was great, exciting WWE action. The brand is more over than the superstars.
Because everybody watching live now, I don't think perceives the show as they did 10 years ago. 10 years ago, You see a guy, here's the oddest example, Rene Dupree, Laura Sistons, or something like that. Just, you're a lower card tag team, but you believed in their character. They could be bad wrestlers. They could be bad on the microphone, but that is the card you were dealt with, right? And you believe that. Now when people go to shows, they think, is that a good character? Like, am I believing that person? Oh, good job. This is awesome. And you, as a fan, even when you go live, go behind the curtain by default because you're waiting for somebody to F up. You're waiting for a spot to happen. You're waiting for somebody to be injured. Let's be honest here, because people love to see that live because they want to take their pictures. And it's gotten to the point where the show, at the end of the day, is no longer about the wrestlers, but about the people watching the wrestlers. The wrestlers actually became a second part of the show. Mm-hmm. Now you tune into Raw, but how many times have we said, oh, this show is great because that audience felt like they were invested into it? And a lot of times it happens to be audiences that are outside of the U.S. Let's look back at Beast in the East, right? Mm-hmm. We enjoyed that show. The Japanese crowd is not like super loud or something, but you could just feel the difference that they weren't waiting there. They weren't going there to be entertained. They were there to see a freaking badass wrestling show. Madison Square Garden is another good example. When you get to these key audiences, you get to see that. But everywhere else, it just feels like people watch that because it is a pattern. So they might as well have fun trying to get themselves over or do something like that. And I do think it's frustrating because let's put something to a test here, Ryan. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that the product has gotten so formulaic to a point where most of the segments that happen in ring do not even need a live audience anymore? Because of the way things happen, because of the what chance, because of the way that the WWE has conditioned the audience, you could just do Miss TV backstage and add some sounds like if it was a sitcom, and it would still work.
Yeah, I mean, very rarely does a chant break out that feels kind of outside the box unless you're in those really smarky crowds. It's like, but I mean, part of wrestling is about working the crowd in that way. You know what I mean? You are doing these certain things to elicit reactions at certain points. It's not spontaneous like it used to be. And that's a big thing that, Mick Foley and Steve Austin get into, is how there's no spontaneity on the show. You don't get that anything can happen feel every Monday night like you used to.
And also, I think another situation, and let's bring it back to Dolph Ziggler. Wrestlers went from demanding attention to looking for attention. Mm-hmm. Everybody watching, picture the following entrances. Triple H, The Rock, The Undertaker, Stone Cold. They basically walked out and one of them spat, one of them went to four corners, one of them just walked. The Undertaker's entrance is walking slowly. And then The Rock, he does his walk and poses in the corner. Very basic things, but they demand attention. Like every single step in that entrance, you're like, that is the guy that I paid money to see. In contrast, now every entrance, and let's even bring up New Day as an example, you have to be so high up there. You look at Dolph Ziggler, it's like, let me do like all this punching thing. Every time he comes out, it feels like I don't even need to watch the screen because I already know what you're going to do. You do the same thing you did last week. Before, it was just walking, so you paid more attention to the face, the facial expressions, but because they worry about like where your arms are supposed to go, because you got to do all this punching stuff, the facial expressions that really sells the story is completely gone, at least for me, and that's when it sort of really clicked to me that we've gotten to a point where you can have Raw on in the background, listen to it, and you can kind of know what's really happening already, from entrances to matches, because you know that guy's moveset, you know that guy's entrance, and you don't really get much else until a pay-per-view, with the exception of something like the league. So that's why it's gotten stale for me.
Yeah, no,
and
for
that's
sure.
why I do think ratings are dipping.
I mean, there's a lot of matches where you just kind of tune out because you know what's going to happen, and there's no reason to even watch it because you're just kind of like half watching it because, whatever. Like, I mean, I'll even admit the Dolph Ziggler-Tyler Breeze match, I was barely paying attention to it because I was like, whatever. This is like the third time these guys have faced each other and I know nothing's going to happen. You pay attention at the pay-per-views because that's when actual, stakes are usually there.
Yeah.
And, there's going to be some sort of progress. Another thing I wanted to touch on that I've just been thinking about, and like Ziggler has said this before, and, or even I've heard, Daniel Bryan said it like a couple of years ago, like on TV when they're saying like, I stole the show or I'm going out there, like they're talking about like entertaining everybody, like in promo stuff where it's like, what happened to wins and losses? Like what? If think about this, if you were an actual wrestler in an actual wrestling match, would you actually really care about how dramatic the match was? No, you would just care about actually winning. Does, do sports players talk about, well, I mean, they might say it was, it was a hard fought win or, a tough loss or
but
something.
They won.
But they're not going to they're not going to kind of relish in the drama of it all. They're going to care about whether they won or whether they lost.
And they do have their characters like that. If you think about Kevin Owens, his character is he's a prize fighter. He goes in there and does what is needed to win. Going back to that Ziggler-Tyler Breeze match, I felt the exact same way. Question: were you watching knowing that Ziggler was simply going to get the win this week?
I didn't even think that. I was just like, it didn't matter who won to me. Because what of it? You know what I mean? But
yeah.
That's kind of like, I'm going to transition back to the Roman Reigns thing and just kind of when I was talking about the structure of Raw, because I actually thought they did a lot of good things. I think the opening segment, you kind of I actually like them kind of throwing the New Day with Sheamus. I think Sheamus was really good this week. He's kind of, at first when he had that heel character, you thought he was going to be more of this tough Irish guy, just I'm going to beat the crap out of you, no nonsense type of heel. But he's kind of become more of this goofy, obnoxious Sheamus, which it's almost like his face persona, but it's a heel, which I think actually works really well because he can just kind of get under your skin by being obnoxious. But I liked this whole setup for Reigns where they actually do a WWE Championship match. So, all right, we know the title's probably not going to change, but still we get a match with consequences, the whole 5-minute clock, and then whether he wins or not is consequences for Ambrose, and it's consequences for the Usos, matches with stakes, and like I said, the backstage segments to kind of supplement that. I actually enjoyed that.
I agree. I do think that the structure with the New Day and Sheamus and the whole League of Nations, I am really intrigued by. I think I brought this up last week, but WWE has taken a huge gamble with guys that they weren't really doing much with. You have your Sheamus, you have your King Barrett, Rusev, and Del Rio, who when he came back, people were like, oh yeah, but okay, so now what? And then the U.S. title sort of went back into the background, and then we had the whole Mex America. So is that even a thing now, or is he just Mexican?
I missed Del Rio's entrance. Like, did Zeb Coulter come out with him at the beginning of the night? Was there anything Mex America, or is that complete? It seems like now that they got the League of Nations, that's
because Jack Swagger's still involved in that thing.
Yeah,
he came out at the end, did the whole We the People, so that is a storyline that is still developing. So it seems like they just have different layers. It's almost like a takeover. I'd say more so than the Authority. You can compare this to a Nexus, where they are interrupting the show. So they have multiple storylines that are happening because you have Reigns, you have Swagger, you have your Ambrose, Uso, and this is probably going to keep growing. Maybe you throw in a diva in there, and I think this can work. So I really do like that. It's just weird to me how they have something always like this in the beginning, but then it just runs its course. I think something like the Authority ran its course a while ago. And by default, my first worry is that going to happen with this? Or what's going to happen when Cena comes back? Things that you don't want to think about, but historically speaking, the wounds don't really help too much.
Yeah, I mean, they did kind of have to hotshot this thing because of the circumstances with Rollins. But I do like this. You've got... I also found it funny, though, in the introduction of the league, Sheamus neglected to mention the country that Del Rio was from, I guess because he couldn't just straight up say Mexico, but didn't want to sound like an idiot saying Mex America, so he just didn't say his country of origin. Either way, though, like Del Rio is a guy who's already established, and Rusev as well. King Barrett's been down in the crapper for a while, but... So, like, you can have, like, Del Rio and Rusev have programs going on, but they're also part of this stable. And you've got the New Day who can be, like, associated with them, but I still think they're going to remain, like, very much separate factions that just might work together. And then it's technically, like, 3 factions. You got the League, you've got the New Day, and the Authority. And it's an interesting dynamic that I hope they don't run into the ground too quickly. But I think it was a good move it makes Sheamus a lot more interesting if he's got other characters surrounding him, you know?
Yeah, it really does. And I love the combination of the New Day and the League because they are so different. So it's not like all of a sudden everybody's under one umbrella, so everybody act the same. It does feel like they all have the common goal of keeping a balance in the WWE, even if they have their differences. Because I do hope that at some point it almost implodes. So instead of looking at your Reigns or Ambrose, something happens between the New Day and the League to at least create some kind of friction. Similar to, I guess, how the whole Divas teams happened.
Yeah.
But have it happen over time, not just day one and you have all these teams.
No,
have
that's true. Their association, their partnership, I didn't even think of that, is great because, I mean, let's be real. A New Day babyface turn is not something out of the question. And that could definitely lead to an interesting matchup between the two. And you also, of course, you can even almost say the Roman Reigns family could become like another faction, you know, with Ambrose and the Usos. So there could be some sort of faction wars things going on. We just had Survivor Series, but, you know, there's still room for it.
Survivor Series Part 2. Now, before moving on, I do want to take a quick moment to sort of just clear the air a little bit, because I know in my case I may seem overly negative in this episode. It is just a frustrating time to be a fan, and I do think that when you see so many wrestlers also pointed out, it's nice to get it out there, because that is exactly why, you know, there is a podcast. Like, I want your guys' feedback. Do you feel this frustration? Do you think that maybe the perspective in which WWE should be enjoyed is different? We had a conversation, I think it was like a month ago or so, Ryan, where maybe it's nice that people do other things while watching a 3-hour show, as opposed to just sitting down and then just looking right at it. You know, maybe that is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. Watching a 3-hour show once a week, every single week, is demanding. Even if that show was top to bottom spectacular, that is still a hell of a commitment. And we're watching a show that is far from spectacular on most weeks. So just think about that.
Pretty much. So before getting to the announcements, let's finally talk specifically about the League. Because we talked about possibilities between the New Day and them and all that. But do you like the combination of the League itself as a main establishment on the show now? It seems like the Authority may be taking a backseat now, but do you visualize this, as I mentioned, as more of a takeover? Think of a nexus? Do you think it's going to be a union where each guy is going to try and achieve their own goals, or are they all collectively trying to destroy Roman Reigns?
I think it's more of it's a unity type of thing where they're all together and associated with each other. I'm sure there'll be some beatdowns and stuff, but at the same time, they all have their separate goals that they're going for. They're going to have their separate programs, and it's not just going to be like the League is in one program at a time, unless it's some sort of faction battle, which could happen, but they still got to really establish themselves. Then it was cool to have the New Day there with them, but on their first night, I felt like they should have been maybe just them. I don't think it was necessary to have to put the New Day in there with them at the end, but it was kind of a cool imagery to see, you know, the amount of championships already with them. You know, pretty much the only titles missing was the women's, the Divas Championship, and Kevin Owens with his Intercontinental Championship, which, I mean, even him being, from Canada.
He should be in that.
He could be. I kind of like Owens better if he's standing on his own. You know what I mean? He's kind of better as the lone wolf. That's at least how I feel. Not that I've even seen him in a faction. I just that's the vibe I get.
I do think there's a chance that Kevin Owens gets involved. I do see it as more of there's a group of 5 people, but Kevin Owens is the guy that's in there simply because he can maybe make more money with that group. Not so much that he enjoys it. So he's like the odd man out. Mm-hmm. And I think it gets more exposure on him because I think that Sheamus being a champion is not necessarily a bad thing. And I know that maybe 2 weeks ago, I said something along the lines of, not all that great, but I do think that they're doing enough different things with the character to the point where I may enjoy this. I mean, I hope that this league turns out to be something that was missing, because now we would have 4 guys be established instead of none of them, because none of them were established at this point. And then think about Rollins coming back, Cena coming back. You have your Cesaro coming back when he's able to. You have your Randy coming back, which apparently the Randy Orton situation is way more serious than originally thought. But there are options that can maybe happen. And as we mentioned, New Day face turn eventually. Not now, please, but maybe in a couple of months. Another feud. A lot of possibilities with just one change. Okay, gang, so getting to a couple of announcements. As we've mentioned previously, we are getting to the end of the year. We are in December. This is December 1st. Like, Christmas is coming around.
It's crazy.
Hopefully Ryan gets me some gifts. The year already went by.
I know.
It's been almost a year since we saw each other physically in person, man.
I know. It's crazy how time flies, but it's already that time of year again.
Yeah, so... And part of our tradition, we do have the Byte Awards. That is our special end of the year podcast, which will be happening. And we want to do something even more special, or special-er, if you will. And that is have a viewer's equivalent of the show. So you guys have the opportunity to vote on the exact same categories that we'll be having. So you'll be getting a podcast special, but over on the YouTube channel, you will get a viewer special. So all of your votes will be tallying them up and then announcing the winners on that. So that being said, we'll be announcing all of them right now. There's going to be a video over the weekend. So youtube.com/ByteThatCast, nearing 4,000 subscribers. So make sure you subscribe, and then you'll get that video where you can name your picks. So these are the categories, Ryan. Are you ready, man?
Yep.
Change the Channel Award.
See, so that is a moment basically that is self-explanatory. And I'm sure we've had plenty of this year, moments that you wanted to change the channel. So our next award category is going to be things WWE shoved down our throats. That's a little bit of a
award.
Hopefully it was something safe for work.
Yeah, that's no one night in China here, so let's just keep that in mind. Next up is a pretty self-explanatory Superstar of the Year.
Then we have Rookie of the Year.
Then we go over to Diva of the Year.
Or Woman of the Year. We gotta be progressive, man. Pay-per-view of the Year.
Feud of the Year.
Match of the Year.
This is a tough one. Headline of the Year. It can be anything from Dusty Rhodes passing, unfortunately, to Roddy Piper, to maybe a match being announced.
Yeah, Seth Rollins cashing in, Sheamus cashing in,
getting injured.
Seth Rollins getting injured, things like that. And I'm sure we won't be hard pressed to find many of these in the next category, biggest disappointment of the year.
Yeah, so with all of these, once again, over the weekend, there will be a video on the channel where you can submit your picks for all of these. Also, make sure to send us an email, bytethatcast@gmail.com, with suggestions for us, because let's face it, it's a long year. Sometimes we forget things, and we could use the power of positivity from our listeners to make sure that we have a kick-ass, badass, assy list.
So just to be clear, if to submit their actual suggestions for the listener version, they would just comment on the YouTube video. Is that correct?
Correct. So the YouTube video will be happening this weekend. It will be up either Saturday 5th or December 6th. So your votes there will specifically go towards the viewer special on the channel. Anything else will be suggestions, maybe picks that maybe we've overlooked or something for our Byte Awards. So that'll be happening on the weekend.
So what else is going on the channel?
Yeah, way too much stuff. We have some really good conversations. So you have a great discussion video that went up over the weekend about the Money in the Bank. And you basically talk about whether it should continue, right?
Yeah, I kind of talk about, has it run its course? Have they done everything they can do with it? Is there any more stories to really tell with it? So I ask, should it be retired? So you can check that out on the channel.
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago, I posted a video about Eva Marie possibly becoming the next NXT Women's Champion. And obviously, everybody met me with great regard. Just so many hugs
Eva
happening.
Marie has an audience. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and her match with Bayley was awesome. Just think about it from a storyline perspective. It made perfect sense. We have really great episode.
It was way better than I expected.
Wait, you watched it?
It's the only NXT I've watched in a while, but I did actually tune in to watch it.
Did you tune in for Eva Marie, though?
I literally,
be honest.
That's the only thing I watched on the entire episode. I'm sorry.
I am in pain.
I was curious. Eva Marie's in a NXT Women's Title match. I kind of have to see how it pans out.
People, it works.
She was carried hard, but
works.
It actually was a decent match.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit traumatized right now, but yeah, this Thursday we have a brand new Square Roundtable going up with a hypothetical situation. I was going to say hyperbolical.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, hypothetical. What happens to the WWE when Vince McMahon passes away? At some point that will happen. Will the company shift in any sort of direction? We have a weird conversation. It's a good one, but it's an interesting one. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about many things in this episode. If you guys want some more of this conversation about the behind-the-scenes stuff, or our perspective, definitely send us an email, bytethatcast@gmail.com, or Twitter, bytethatcast. This is not something we traditionally do in the show. You know, we do have the format where we talk about Raw, but with all of these conversations happening in the podcast, we felt the necessity to bring it up. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that conversation. Ryan, how have you felt sort of talking about these different things? Like, as a fan, it's almost like we have two shows and we've never really talked about this. So we watch Raw, but indirectly, we watch the behind-the-scenes aspects of the WWE, and that's like its own show.
Wrestling is weird, man, and we all think about it on this weird level of just like, we can't just watch anything at the surface anymore, and I don't even know, like, it's fun. It's really fun to discuss, and that's why this podcast exists, because we like to talk about things like that and speculate, and sometimes I feel like we might get too caught up in the stuff going on behind the scenes and don't immerse ourselves enough. Immersion is like the key word for me today. We don't immerse ourselves enough in the product at face value, but there's sometimes just not a lot of substance at face value, so we got to dig a little deeper. But I always enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. Like I love that podcast with Wade Keller and what Mick Foley's been talking about, where he's ready to give up on the show, and he had that kind of great quote of as like if like where Ohio goes, so does the nation, or something like that. Basically saying, he feels that him losing interest is kind of a sign that a lot of people are losing interest, and we can see that with the ratings. But it's fun to speculate, what's missing, what needs to be done, what do we want to see more of.
And it reminds us just how passionate fans are, because with any TV show, we do have like the talking dead, or the shows have gotten to a point where they have that. But with wrestling, they happen almost at the same time. Like something happens on the screen and you're immediately thinking about what was the creative process behind that. You don't think about that when you watch a movie. You don't think about that when you watch a TV show. You think about it maybe afterwards. That didn't make a lot of sense. but it's not instantaneous that you have that. It is really only with wrestling. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't think it's too much of a good thing based on our anxiety. It shouldn't. Why does wrestling cause so much anxiety? Right? We've grown to be so paranoid over time.
It's true. Like, on most shows you'll watch and there'll be a bad season or whatever. And you're just like, it was a bad season. But you don't like have people questioning the writers as much. Like the only time I've really questioned writers of a show and things like that is like the season finale of Dexter, because it was so downright awful. But other than that, you just kind of accept things. You're just like, it was a bad season, but it gets better or whatever. But like wrestling, you spend the entire time nitpicking and all that, which I'm sure
ends.
Yeah, I'm sure plenty of nitpicking happens with other shows, but wrestling goes to a different level.
Yeah, it really does. So this is the part where I usually throw it to Keith. So Ryan, I'm going to throw it to you.
All right.
We do have questions that they have to be answered by us.
That's right. We've got some questions. I don't know. I can't do it like Keith. But so if you have questions, you can, of course, email us, bytethatcast@gmail.com. Send us a question through Twitter using the hashtag AskBT. We know some other sports guy uses it, but we like to confuse him just as much as his confuse us. So keep it going, guys. All right. So our first question comes from Connor M. And he says, to start off, I have two questions. Question one, what diva/superstar do you feel was the most underrated?
Molly Holly.
I was going to say we can go, he said was, so it can be past or present.
Yeah. I'm going to say Molly Holly. I was always a huge fan of hers, but she wasn't the supermodel that Trish was, or didn't have the unique look that Lita had. She was more of a woman. Like, she was a female wrestler, and Dee Malenko is one of my all-time favorites. She was trained by Dee Malenko, hence why I enjoyed her work so much.
Yeah, some ones that come to mind, and Molly Holly was one of them. I think as far as WWE goes, Gail Kim. Obviously, she's had a better run in TNA, really. Natalya, a current wrestler who's definitely underrated, not in the way that I think everyone pretty much knows she's a great wrestler, but she never really just gets the screen time to actually shine. And Victoria is another one who I felt like didn't quite get their due in WWE. All right, the second question. If you could choose any NXT, TNA, ROH, NJPW, or any former wrestler to come to the WWE, who would it be and why? I
don't know how, but Jay Lethal right now is on fire in Ring of Honor. He's representing the company in such a great way, transformed himself from Black Machismo. It took years to finally get that all shaken off. A badass character. And I'd love to see what he could do in WWE.
I would like to see Kurt Angle get one more run in WWE. I know he's retiring from TNA, and we don't know what that means, if that's the rest of his career, but he's a guy.
Wrestling.
Yeah, he's a guy, like, I mean, both these guys, it seems like impossible, but Kurt Angle versus Daniel Bryan, like, probably never going to happen because neither of them could wrestle again. I don't know, but that would be my pick. Oh, well, also AJ. I'd like to see AJ Styles have a run too.
Yeah, AJ Styles apparently reported that he's taken almost too many indie dates, and now he's going to specifically work on the two companies he's aligned himself with, and I think that's a wise choice. So, Mr. Connor, thank you, sir, for supporting, for reading, loving the podcast. Welcome to the wasteland. The next one, I don't know why. Nice. I felt like saying that.
Yeah, it sounded cool.
Yeah. So the next one comes from Gug the Dio. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Doug the Trio.
And it is as follows. Do you think that the WWE would benefit from canceling SmackDown and making Raw the only brand, and having NXT be televised as the other brand, possibly receiving its own pay-per-views like the old brand split era?
No. I don't think WWE would benefit because they would be losing money. They'd be losing a lot of ad revenue and all that. Maybe the only benefit I would see is that's 2 hours less of TV that they'd have to write. So maybe creatively they'd be less stressed on that. Less
oversaturation.
Less overworked in that way. But NXT, if NXT goes to cable or whatever, it's going to lose a lot about what you like about NXT right now, which NXT is just free to do what it wants. And it's a building. You can't forget that it is developmental. So these people have freedoms to really kind of find themselves in NXT. And I think if you make it a straight up regular TV show, you're going to sacrifice some of that because all of a sudden ratings matter and things have to change because of that.
Yeah, I think we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the best option instead of seeing SmackDown go is to reduce the length of both shows. I was watching SmackDown reruns on the network of the Paul Heyman era when you had the SmackDown 6 and all that. SmackDown at that point, without commercials and all that, came out to about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. And that is such a good length for a wrestling show. That is perfect. And Raw is simply too long. NXT, keep it at 1 hour in Full Sail on the network. I don't care how big or popular NXT becomes. The moment it tries to become a little bigger than what it is, which they're already doing it by touring, but the touring is either for the arrivals or just non-televised. So I think that's super awesome.
All right, our next question is from Nick H at nhunt_09. Let me clear my throat for a second there. Okay. He asks, who should the Dudleys recruit as a fourth member against the Wyatts? I was thinking RVD, but I don't know if he's still with TNA. #AskBT. RVD, as far as I know, is just kind of chilling right now. I don't think he's wrestling anywhere, if I'm correct.
Yeah, he's just doing that, living that 420
now that you
lifestyle.
suggest it, RVD could make a lot of sense. I don't know if a guy I'd like to see is like Raven, but I don't know if I don't know what his relationship with WWE is. But now that you mention it, RVD sounds very probable, and I would like to see a fourth ECW guy.
Yeah, I think RVD could be a really good option. I almost thought it was going to be Sandman based on the music on Raw, because the way people reacted, the camera panning out, I was just like, "What Sandman? What can he even do right now in here?" But if not Rob Van Dam, I really don't know. I don't think there's another pick that's not Spike Dudley. I don't think Raven, sadly, can really do a lot in terms of recognition. Raven, I think, among the IWC is highly recognized, but he never really got a big break in WWE aside from almost destroying WrestleMania 17.
Maybe they should get like Elijah Burke.
Yes, they should get Colin Delaney in there, man.
Oh my
Talk
God.
about ECW originals.
The zombie.
There we go. That's it. Okay. Or Abraham Washington. He can come back and tell more Kobe Bryant jokes.
Kevin Thorne. Yeah.
Ooh, is
Kobe
down
Bryant's
deep
retiring now, so they can have more jokes.
The real answer, let's be honest here, is Bobby Lashley.
Yeah. The face of ECW.
People, we love you. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Nick H, for the question. Then the next one comes over from Gaming is Art 88 on YouTube. Do you guys think WWE should have an off season? I say yes. It will be better for us and for the talent. Awesome show. What do you think, Rhino?
Well, the thing is, they are in a formula where they make money year round, so it's really hard that once you're on this non-off-season system to kind of wane yourself off of it, because there's no way you can do it without just losing money. You have to think this is a publicly traded company. You can't just do these drastic changes. But do I think that there could be a way to do an off-season that doesn't sacrifice yearly airing of a show? Yes, I think you could kind of have a talent rotation system where, guys can take a month off at a time so that you're not overworking a lot of these guys. So you have them go X amount of months at a time. You write them off for a month. Sure, lengthy title reigns, that kind of creates an issue, but I feel like that's the exception to the rule, that you could figure out some ways to do that. Maybe they lighten up the house show schedule. But basically, talent-wise, I think you should have off-season, but not actually Monday Night Raw.
I think there's an opportunity with something like Lucha Underground being renewed for not just a second, but a third season. That show's going to grow. And that show is a TV show with wrestling, and people love it. And at some point, WWE could benefit from an off-season where they can use the open time to I guess, re-edit everything and give us a narrative of a storyline. So, like, during this, the season cliffhanger is that Roman Reigns turned heel, right? That can be it. Then during the break, it could be seeing step by step what happened with Roman Reigns, what happened with everybody else. So when it's back, it's like, yep, I know. I saw all of that. And you can get interviews. So you have some new recent material while you have the off season, but you're not oversaturating the product. You're not killing people. You still have your weekly show. You can do flashbacks. I mean, we used to have Raw Rewinds where they would play old matches. And it was nice. It took a little bit of a break from just everything that's happening right now. So what I want in off-season? Yes. Yes.
I think we all would, but is it going to happen? It's I think the only, like I said, I think the only realistic one would be talent-wise. As much as a show-wide season break could help kind of refresh everything, including, just everybody can take time to figure out what they want to do for the next season and all that, but it is what it is. The next question comes from the True Prince of Pro, and he asks, why isn't The Miz getting a push? You'd think that with all the injuries in WWE, they could use a credible heel like Miz.
I do think it's interesting how it's been so long since The Miz got an uppercard to main event feud going on, because this last feud was Mizdow. Think about it. Like, realistically, that was it. And even that was sort of a spin-off. It was a thing that happened organically, and they let it end, and nothing else came after. I think the business reason is probably that he is at a really good spot where he's marketable, people know who he is, so he doesn't need to be any higher, because at the same time, it's not like you look at Miz in the same light you would see Sheamus. Because the moment Miz became champion, a lot of people took wrestling as more of a joke than it already was, because they were reminded he was from the real world. And even though that is good that you get to know that guy, he's going to have that stigma of, oh, he's that reality guy, and like he's not all that big. So I think that he's in a pretty good spot, but he should get at least one more run in the top.
I think, Stephanie McMahon basically said what she thought of The Miz on live television, and that he's a utility player. He's a guy that they can use for media and promotions. And I think they just like him in his kind of Miz TV role. I don't know. They just kind of like him in that spot. He does actually go off and film a lot of those like straight to DVD movies and stuff like that. So maybe
we got to watch that, man.
Yeah. They don't like to have him too heavily involved in programs if he's going to kind of be going off and doing like, small roles in films and stuff like that. I think they just really like the spot that they have him in.
Yeah, I agree. So, Mr. True Prince, thank you, sir, for the question. Next one comes over from Philly Chili PCE in the house, man.
Team PCE.
He's in here. Yeah. Bro. So the next one is, do you guys watch the What Culture wrestling videos? What are your thoughts on them? Would you be able to do content like what they do, i.e. a YouTube video on how WWE should book? This podcast episode, in some ways, is kind of the whole booking thing, but I get the point. So What Culture, we know about the channel, right? At least I've watched many videos.
I've seen a couple of their videos and I enjoyed them. I need to watch more of them.
Yeah, so he's asking, should we or could we at some point down the line do sort of a fantasy booking thing? I think the answer internally may be a possibility. We don't want to force ourselves to do something where maybe we don't feel like it's necessary. Like, oh, well, let's do the fantasy booking thing because we should. It's like, if we see a situation where we need to talk about this, like, because this is not the storyline, this should be it, then you're probably going to see that happening in the channel. That's why you also don't see me singing each week. Although you will see Ryan singing soon.
Fantasy booking just kind of happens spontaneously on the podcast where we say, a lot of times we don't book a storyline out of nowhere. We always kind of see a storyline and kind of predict where we think it's going to go or where we would like it to go. But how the word should is the word that I don't like to use, because we like to speculate and, we like to say what we want to see and how we feel. But at the same time, we don't like to act like we know any better than anyone else. We're just we're just saying how we feel, We're not saying our opinion is better than anyone else's.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to go overboard with that. And then the second one is, I love your interaction with your fans. Thank you. We love interacting with all of you, especially Ryan. He loves everybody. Don't you, Ryan?
Sure. Yeah, of course I do. I enjoy a lot of good stuff. We appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, we really do. So, do you think it would be a cool idea to provide your listeners with a championship for interaction or for asking awesome questions, etc.? I think that an alternative, something that we may be doing, not necessarily related to that, is some form of other YouTube interaction videos. We're talking about these things, seeing how they can happen, because the three of us do have jobs. We do have our individual lives, and we want to make sure that we can balance everything accordingly so we don't burn ourselves out. But we know that there's a lot of stuff that you guys want to see us provide, and stay tuned, I guess, is the best answer. But to not go all politic, we are looking for options into providing not more content, but different content every now and then, at least.
Yes, to be continued on that.
Yes, sir.
All right, so our next question is from the RedTube favorite, Hardwood Classics. Hello once again, Byte That Cast. I have another question. Now that the Wyatt family have been buried for the time being... Oh, and there's a lot of scuffling going on.
Hey, don't worry. I can read it meanwhile if you want.
Okay,
so Hardwood Classics. What up? Hello once again, Byte That Cast. I have another question. Now that the Wyatt family have been buried for the time being and The Undertaker is set to retire, what is left for Kane to do to keep him relevant? Should Republican make his return?
Kane, I don't know what to do with Kane, and I just kind of realized he hasn't been on TV. So
do you want him on your TV, though?
For his final run, I mean, I don't know. Are they going to have like Undertaker and Kane like retire at the same time? I'm not really sure. I don't think there's much left for Kane to do, and same with the Undertaker. So I would like to see them maybe both ride off into the sunset at this year's WrestleMania.
Literally?
Yes. I mean, it'd be cool. It's in Texas. They could be like a Western style,
Go over to the Broken Skull Ranch.
Exactly. I know. I just watched Steve Austin's podcast, so I'm saying all of his like things.
Yeah. Hashtag Hershey the Wonder Dog. Yeah, for me, I honestly don't want Kane on my TV at this point. He's done everything. Like, if he retires right now, he is going into the Hall of Fame. There's no doubt about that. He's had a memorable career. We actually did a spotlight, so we'll make sure to share that here on the channel, where we talk about basically all of his career leading up to Corporate Kane. So, I don't know. I think this is it. And that's great. Like, go all out. Like, if you end your career with the guy that you feuded with at the beginning, that's pretty awesome.
I think that would be kind of cool. It's just, you kind of want to do the whole putting people over on your way out. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. So the next question from D Morgan. So they ask, do you think that guy who only watches Raw for Jack Swagger is enjoying his feud with Del Rio?
I love how we always bring up that one guy.
For context, I'm not even sure if he's still listening. I don't remember his name, but he said his favorite wrestler was Jack Swagger. This is about a year ago, maybe even longer. And we just kind of felt bad for him because Swagger doesn't exactly get a lot of opportunities these days. So I think he must be ecstatic because Jack Swagger literally went from just complete obscurity to now being involved in a U.S. title match, which for the U.S. title, not really great for its credibility because some guy just comes out of nowhere. Like, it just says, hey, you can sit out for a year and then come in and get a title shot for this belt. So it must be really important, right, guys? But it's cool for Swagger.
Yeah, he's got to be enjoying it. Indirectly, he's now involved in the main event scene because of the whole League of Nations thing. So if you're still listening, we want to know. Like, give us a little bit of an essay about why you love Swagger. That one fan, you. Bring it over and we will read it on the show. So the next one comes over from Pipe Bomb Martin. And he asks, why do each of you still watch WWE? That is a hard question.
It is a tough question. Why do I watch it? Well, one reason is that I wouldn't have a whole lot to say on this podcast if I didn't watch it. That might be an issue. But I watch it because there's really nothing else like it. It's consistent television that you follow week to week to see what's going to happen. There's always kind of people to talk to about, what's going on. Like, there's nothing else I talk about more, like, or have like, conversations, at least when it comes to what's on television, than WWE. There's so much depth to what goes on, and there's so much to speculate. And then those moments, like, you sit there and you watch someone's career evolve over years, decades, and you see these characters evolve. Like, there's no other show where you can see that happen. So it's very unique in that. And why do I still watch it? I'll be honest. If I wasn't doing this podcast, I probably would have not stopped watching WWE, but I think I would definitely take breaks, during certain points. But obviously, I love doing this show, so I'm committed to watching it.
Yeah, for me, I think the best reason why I continue to watch it is that for the worst episode of Raw, we've had some pretty bad ones this year. I'd say we've had some of the worst in a long time, like in the past couple of years. This year, you can still have the context. You can still have a conversation. And I don't mean to go into the WWE hype machine, but there's such a social element to it. Like, outside of the podcast, like, let's, hit pause hypothetically. There's just so much that you can talk about because there's the context, like you mentioned, Ryan. Right now you can see Roman Reigns. Oh, he's getting the Daniel Bryan push. Then you can talk about the Daniel Bryan push. Oh, they're trying to make him the next Stone Cold. Why? Let's talk about Stone Cold and compare. And there are all these different things that for any show on TV that you want to do that, there's a ceiling. With WWE, there's no ceiling. It keeps going. It never ends. And I just love that experience so much.
All right. Our next question from Barney Johnson.
Balls.
A.K. Barna Balls. Okay. He asks,
we can't do the Keith thing there.
Balls. Where are Rex and Sex? Will we ever see them again? To anyone who's utterly confused by that, we have our bi-weekly fantasy wrestling league called Fight Night, and two characters are currently lost in time. Yes, gets a little crazy. Will we ever see them again? Well, if you've watched the latest episodes, we do have traces of them. We've found them in their respective timelines. So we're going to see what we can do to get them back. That's all I can say for now.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. This is a really tough situation. Keith has slept night in and night out. We're the ones really worrying about this. Keith is the general manager, for those that don't know.
He's just been sleeping this whole time. He hasn't been doing crap.
He doesn't care, man. And we're the ones doing all the work. It's like we're Brad Maddox and he's like the authority. So now we got to switch her.
Pricks.
So yeah, Fight Night. If you haven't checked it out, YouTube channel. That's where we have that thing. So the last question comes over from NKBE1324, and it is it just me or do we need Cena back already? Ryan,
my answer is Cena. What? Do I miss Cena? Not really, to be honest with you. Not at all. I think Cena obviously has his value, but since this kind of League of Nations has risen, I think that this is kind of the direction that they're going, and these are the guys that they're going to build to. And you wonder if Cesaro wasn't hurt, would he have been in that? I don't know. Maybe. I just kind of thought of that. But anyway, this League of Nations that they have, like, these are the guys they're going to build. I think they've got enough people to work on to keep the show interesting. I don't think we really need Cena there right now. I think we need a break from Cena. Even though the roster is, struggling right now, I don't think Cena is going to help it that much.
Yeah, I really do think that Cena should stay away for the rest of the year. Like, you have the nation happening here. The nations. It's going to take a while. What are we calling? Okay, internally, are we just calling them the League?
Yeah, League, whatever.
All right, so we're calling the League is happening.
What is it? LON? I don't know. Legion of Nightmare.
League.
Legacy of Nightmare.
Nations. So the nations just happened on Raw, right? Let that marinate. Because the moment Cena becomes involved, even if he's not part of that storyline, which there's no way he wouldn't be, people are just going to be thinking to themselves, when's that going to happen? Let this play out. For anything that we are complaining about Reigns or something, let this happen. If it fails, then great. If it doesn't, prove us wrong. Because that means we'll enjoy it. Because we are intrigued by this. It's something really different, so I hope it succeeds. So thank you, Mr. NKBE, for the question, sir. Thanks to everybody that always sends them. If you're a listener that you've been listening for a long time and you're a little bit scared to send questions because we will read your name out loud, fear no longer. The solution is simply bytethatcast@gmail.com or askBT on Twitter. We will read your questions. We will interact and love you. Mostly Ryan. He's so lonely. So Ryan, for everything else.
Thanks for that.
What do we got?
All right,
Anytime,
so thank you guys for listening to another edition of Byte That Podcast. So make sure to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ByteThatCast. That is the best way to get extra content beyond this podcast, like this Thursday, where we have an SRT where we hypothetically talk about what WWE would be like when Vince McMahon passes away. So that's an interesting conversation. Of course, this weekend we're going to have that video up about the year-end awards, so you can give your picks for the end of the year, the best ofs, the worst ofs, and let us know your thoughts, and we will do a video showing all of your picks. And then, of course, our social media, Twitter @ByteThatCast. You can email us, bytethatcast@gmail.com. I'm screwing this all up. Instagram, Byte That, Wrestling, MNO, Byte That. For everything else, you can go to bytethat.com. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
Peace.